This is how we start off our shows. Okay, we start off on the left side, and we go hodl, 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 save, 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 build a, sound money, sound money. All right, this is Ugly Old Goat, guys, and I'm doing a read through of what I consider one of my more important articles that I've done in a while. And so I do encourage you to listen up and we go through this. The name of it is Hodlers are the Bank of Last Resort in a World of Free Market Banking and the Bitcoin Standard. But before we get going, I do want to remind everyone that the Goat Lady and I are going to be at the Financial Summit, and that's in the Dominican Republic the first week of August. It's from August 1st through the 6th. Guys, this is an event that's sponsored by Tone Vase. It's for basically experienced traders, investors, hedge funds, experienced people in the market that are looking to exchange ideas, perhaps partner up with different ideas. And the Goat Lady and I have never missed one of these. Tone started it in Bali, which was just at the time I kind of was under the weather, and so it was kind of a great vacation and recovery. And it was a wonderful experience. Goat Lady and I just loved it. And then last year it was in Dubai, and that was really nice too. We'd never been to Dubai. And now this year it's going to be in the Dominican Republic, and I've never been there either. So I'm looking forward to it. You know, Tone's a worldwide traveler. He knows his stuff, and so I trust his judgment. Now it's not it's not cheap. I think it's $9,000, but it includes everything. It includes your accommodations, all your meals, your drinks, and it's just you sit down and relax. It's very comfortable atmosphere. So, at any rate, if you can make that, I do encourage it. I will be there, and look forward to seeing you there. All right, let's get going. And again, I've already been complimented on this article by some people that I really respect, and I was kind of a little bit proud of it too, because I think I'm 73 years old. These problems that you're going to be facing this next generation really are not going to be my problems. I don't have to be doing this. I do it because I love it. I love the idea of sound money. If you notice, I don't promote Bitcoin. Bitcoin needs no promotion. Bitcoin is sound digital money. It's the only one that meets all the qualifications. But the goal here is not to promote Bitcoin, it's to promote sound money. If we have sound money, we don't need Bitcoin. Bitcoin came about because we don't have sound money. And we have the central bankers are controlling and manipulating the money. So let's get going. Now, this is a cool thing, guys. Particularly if you're young, you're looking for an opportunity. To me, this is where it's at in the future. The opportunity exists for 10,000 or even 100,000 micro banks to emerge spontaneously at swap meets or just in the marketplace in your local town, operating solely on the Bitcoin standard for those with the courage to act quickly. And it's time for hodlers to relearn the lost art of commercial banking. And of course, I refer to the article written by E.C. Harwood that explains the lost art of commercial banking. And there's links to it there later down in the article. I do encourage that you read that. As we witness the predictable cleansing of DeFi's, NFTs, and shitcoin banks or exchanges, it is necessary to examine the thinking which brought us here. Why? If Bitcoin truly stands alone, has it followed and at times led the current deleveraging phenomena? This article will focus on the current failure of Bitcoin banking and what hodlers can do to fix it. Incidentally, as I'm looking at this, I noticed the Medium popped up. It looks like an article I want to read. It says, I love that name. Say bye-bye to Ponzi yields, a new era of decentralized perpetual. I don't know what the article's about. I don't know if it's worthwhile or not, but I like that term, Ponzi yields, because that's what you've seen in the markets here with the development of DeFi. So there's a picture of E.C. Harwood, my mentor, my hero, and in my day, back in the 1979, I started minting gold coins, and he was the natural one to put on the front of a gold coin because he was one that taught me about sound commercial banking. Now, one of my other heroes is Saifedean Ammous, and he of course, wrote the book, The Bitcoin Standard, and also his latest book is The Fiat Standard, which If you'll see down there, there's a link to my review. I did a very lengthy review on his book, which I think is excellent. I think it might be more important than even the Bitcoin standard because it outlines this idea that anything that's decreed by men, we got a problem with. And so we have to be real careful there where we go. And so he puts it into every aspect of life. Now, my only criticism, he kind of ignored his own views, which is he wants 100% reserve standard, but he didn't, which is fine as long as it's not decreed. Anyway, the fiat standard, in the fiat standard, Saifedean and Ammous use the analogy of overselling seats at a stadium to describe unsound banking. Now, unfortunately, that's not really banking. That describes a warehousing operation. Now, that could be segregated or unsegregated. If you know what that means, segregated is your particular, whatever it is, gold or grain or Bitcoin is separated from everybody else's and held independently. Unsegregated means that it is in a combined pool. And then when you make a claim on it, you get, your Bitcoin or whatever. So, and that describes what a warehouse operation, depending upon how the tickets are sold. So if you're selling tickets with assigned seats, then that would be segregated. If you're just saying, well, here's a seat and it's, first come first, it's kind of like, I think of Southwest Airlines, they don't assign seating. You just walk in and first one you get a seat, you get that seat. And that would be like unsegregated seating. So again, it depends upon how you sell the tickets in the stadium. But there is a real need for self-custody and third-party private warehousing for Bitcoin. That's what we're all doing. That's what I encourage people to do. But that I said, you know what? You need a Jade wallet. You need to segregate. You need to segregate your Bitcoin. Keep it off the exchanges because there's a real. That's real important. That's the bottom line. That is Bitcoin. Okay, but that is distinguished from the Bitcoin standard, which we're going to get into. So. But we don't want to confuse the storing or warehousing with banking. So we're going to describe a little bit about what banking is, how it grew into being. And by banking, I'm not meaning a savings and loan. I'm actually describing what it means. What it means that it is money creation, but it's non-inflationary money creation that represents new wealth coming into the marketplace. Now, this is something that evolved organically in the marketplace during the Gilded Age. No economist invented. We'll get into all this later. But at any rate, the analogy of the football stadium, it just falls apart, except for describing the warehousing operation or a hodl. So if you're a hodler, you have your own warehouse, your warehousing operation. Now that assumes we know that Bitcoin is only 20 million, or 21 million, and we know it's not going to grow. So that's kind of a sum zero game. That's the strength of Bitcoin. We know how many there are. It can be divided into millions of decimal places, whatever, into sats, and there's a fixed amount of seating. Now they're actually assigned too. I mean, when you have your own address, your Bitcoin is assigned to you, and you only know and you have it. So that really is having your own hodl. You are a warehouse, and it's a segregated warehouse. And on an exchange, it would be, you don't really have the Bitcoin, but it's unsegregated. You just have some Bitcoin on there, a promise, an IOU from that exchange. Now, there is also a school of Austrian economics, and it's largely influenced by Murray Rothbard, and it holds that anything less than 100% gold standard or 100% reserves is criminal. And if it were possible, they would actually put an entire nation under 100% gold standard. Anything, including all the banks, anything less than 100% reserves, they consider criminal. And but they would. So the only way they can do that would be by force. I actually called Murray Rothbard out on this back in the 1980s, and I called him when I read his book. I called him a gold socialist. That did not fly well, but it was so funny because that was that article that I wrote that Milton Friedman wrote me and said, "Hey, I saw your article, and here's what I wrote about this stuff." And so it was a pretty interesting thing. And here I am. I was just some old Yahoo in Kansas City, and calling out on it. And it was kind of funny because when I was doing all this stuff, guys, it was really fascinating because I never wrote Milton Friedman. I didn't even know who FAI was. They wrote me and said, "Hey, we're seeing what you're doing here, and we want to encourage in what you're doing." So I'm doing the same thing, guys. I screwed it up. All right, I went to prison over it. There's a lot to it. Maybe I could write the whole history on it. I take full responsibility for it. I blame no one but myself. Okay, so I'm not. There's no. You can do conspiracy theories and all that, but I'm not going to go there. I mismanaged it. If I was a lot smarter than what I am, and then that probably wouldn't happen. I had no bad intentions. I wasn't running off and living the high life or anything like that. But I lost the funds and I paid the price. So there is a similar school in the Bitcoin community, or the technical end, and they also believe in the same thing, that anything less than 100% Bitcoin standard is criminal. And these Bitcoiners with these technological backgrounds, they tend to view, and they'll actually say it, that they consider gold to be a barbarous relic. And in that sense, they're just like John Maynard Keynes, who that's what he called gold, as a barbaric relic. And they don't realize that sound commercial banking on the gold standard actually emerged organically, it emerged just like Bitcoin, which was just incredible. But it wasn't designed. The difference was Bitcoin had a discoverer. I won't call him a creator. He discovered it's always been there, but they discovered it when the need came. But the gold standard, and by that I mean the emergence of gold, a standard on gold, which was banking, non-inflationary banking, that emerged organically. No economist thought of it. There was no grand design. The market just figured it out, and it came about. Now, E.C. Harwood, again, that's my mentor, he wrote about that, and this is quoting from the Lost Art of Commercial Banking, and there's your link there if you want to read the whole article. It's great. It's not long. It's it's a very fine print, but it's about 6 pages long. But he wrote, among the gold standard advocates are found the 100% reserve proponents who would restrict the purchasing media in use to gold and perhaps silver coins or paper currency, and to checking accounts directly representing these. They would go back to medieval times before the earliest beginnings of sound commercial banking. How they would cope with the flood of products to be marketed in a modern industrial civilization, they do not suggest, nor do they seem to realize that a problem might exist. So what happened was self-liquidating commercial paper that emerged organically in the markets on the gold standard in the 19th century solved that problem. There was no fixed decrees, no fixed or decreed reserves. Free market banking determined the money supply. Free market banking expands the money supply as new wealth is created. And here's the important part, it contracts the money supply as these goods are sold in the market. And this was the innovative gold standard that emerged in the 19th century Gilded Age. Now note, again, let me explain this. I'm not talking about gold. There's gold, and there's the gold standard, just as there's Bitcoin and the Bitcoin standard. We need to define the two. They're two different things. The Bitcoin standard is a measuring stick using Bitcoin. Okay? The gold standard is a measuring stick using gold. That's simply what it is, and it acts as a governor on commercial transactions. So here it is: sound commercial banking did not emerge from banking the unbanked, which seems to be the vision of the crypto world. They have all these we're going to help all the poor people. Well, they're not. They're just enriching themselves. And in most cases, the unbanked, they are unbanked for a reason, okay? There's little reason for us to expect that this is going to change. And I'm going to quote here from another student of E.C. Harwood that I recently discovered, and I thought this was an excellent quote. It's Andrea Biacani, and he's an attorney. And anyway, the proper functioning of a commercial banking system is vital for the development of capitalistic economies. Its two primary functions are savings and lending, which revolve around making a profit between the interest rate paid on savings and that charged on the loans. But banks can lend either by drawing from deposits and savings they collected or by creating new money. Now, he added this in bold. This is his own emphasis. Harwood posits that the discriminating factor is to create new money only when such money goes into productive investments, which is in this case, which is when this money increases the quantity of goods and services in circulation, i.e. a company builds a plant to manufacture cars. I kind of don't agree with that. I think that you can create it as the cars are being marketed, but I do think that if you're building a plant to build cars, that's really a capital requirement and not a banking function. That would be my view. But again, if it's free market banking, these are things that we need to relearn. And not when this money finances some consumer spending or any other non-productive investment, i.e. an individual gets a loan to buy that car. Now, that's the distinguishing difference, and I think he makes that very clear. Now, in the first case, the banker can create new money because this is non-inflationary. In the second case, the purchase shall rather be financed by drawing from savings or deposits because creating new money not offset by an increased amount of productive goods would be inflationary. Okay, so the key here, guys, is banking. You can create new money so long as that new money represents new wealth coming into the marketplace, and the reciprocal of that is that new wealth is consumed. Then that money creation is retired. So it's a non-inflationary money creation. Now, this need for the sound banking is becoming evident with the recent collapse of the crypto world and the emergence of the Bitcoin standard. Competition in this new venue has opened the door to relearn the lost art of commercial banking for small and large producers alike, but especially the small producer without access to the fiat money standard. And herein lies the hope of the Bitcoin standard's emergence, okay? And there's the article that Andrea Biacani wrote, and so it's a worthwhile article. There's a link right there. Now, further, with sound commercial banking, new wealth creation is encouraged because low interest and even no interest loans are available to producers that are not available to consumers. Unlike what we are witnessing in the crypto world today, where so-called decentralized finance, or DeFi, promises wealth through money creation, a sound commercial bank first requires you create the wealth, okay? Only then can the money be created because it is secured by this new wealth. And so I call this the swap meet analogy, rather than using Saifedean's stadium analogy, which has a valid, I think, analogy so long as you're describing a warehousing operation. When it comes to banking, it's more like a swap meet. New wealth coming into the market is not limited. We don't know what's coming to the swap meet. It's unlike assigned seating or limited seating in a stadium, and it's more like a swap meet. It ebbs and flows. It is more like an empty field with participants bringing folding chairs, tents, food, services, haircuts, computers, cars, car parts, tools, clothing, a plethora of other items. And now these items also include gold and Bitcoin, and an unlimited goods and services filling the empty field that can be then purchased at that empty field and carried home at the end of the event's end. And so there's a picture of a modern day swap meet. I thought maybe that will maybe help you get this banking idea, it's kind of hard to get your head around it, but I think this makes them a lot easier. So the spectators, they're not just spectators observing an event, buying a ticket to watch a football game, but they're participating. They're actually participating in this swap meet or in the marketplace. Now, entrepreneur bankers will notice two things. First, while the wealth producers are coming into the market with an inventory of a particular wealth produced, their suppliers and the people that work for them have yet to be paid. Now, until these suppliers and workers are paid, they have little or no money except their savings to buy additional things offered in the marketplace. Yet they produce things. They have worked. And we're bringing these things to market now. Now, sure, they have their tangible things. They have their folding chairs, their tents, the pizza stand. We might be producing something, feeding people with pizza, barbershop, clothing, computers, plethora of other items, including a small hoard of gold, silver, Bitcoin, and dollars. But nothing represents a portion of the real wealth contribution that they made at work the last week and is now being offered at the swap meet by their employer or contractor. So, second, what standard or accounting unit should be used to facilitate trade? Folding chairs, tents, pizzas, haircuts, gold, silver, Bitcoin, dollars? Well, of course, here's my article that I wrote years ago that Bitcoin is the standard, and it's a standard, the digital money standard. And I'm not going to outline all the reasons why, but we're going to assume that it is a standard. Pizza and haircuts were quickly ruled out. Dollars seemed like a possibility. I mean, after all, everybody knows what they are. They're recognized. They're legal tender. But, banking in dollars is controlled from the top down by the legacy system. And sound commercial banking is a forgotten art from a bygone era that developed organically, and it's going to be impossible to implement under the current state of affairs, state charters, federal regulations. It can't come from the people that, quote, know what banking is or under our current banking system. It literally we have to start all over again and grow it organically. It's not going to be some great wise economist that's going to make this thing work. It's going to be guys like you and me that just get out there, roll up our sleeves, and go to work. Now, gold seems like a reasonable option since it does have the highest stock-to-flow ratio of any commodity, and it's been used as the standard in the past. But there are definitely drawbacks about gold, and one of them is theft and the divisibility. You just have problems with it. Bitcoin seemed a better option since it is a known fixed supply. It's divisible into small units, as small as sats. It's not easily stolen or confiscated. So Bitcoin was settled upon. Okay, let's see what we can do with this Bitcoin standard. But there's another problem. One sat is too small to be useful since the value in fiat terms was just, it's 0.0002. I don't know what that is, but it's a very small percentage of a penny. So any meaningful valuation, now that's based on 20,000 Bitcoin, $20,000 Bitcoin, any meaningful value measured in fiat dollars required at least 100 sats, which is the equivalent of 2 cents. So with the Bitcoin, that's with the Bitcoin price at $20,000. Now, since this was the first meaningful standard between dollars and Bitcoin, 100 sats was agreed upon by the participants. So actually, I then this is just an artist rendition. It's done by my good friend Dave Matthew, and he did an artist rendition of what a standard might look like. So here's a one standard note, and that's the equivalent of about 2 cents. Here's 5, which would be about 10 cents, and here's 10, which is 20 cents. Now, we actually have a car wash, and we actually printed some of these up. These are not, these are coupons that can be redeemed at the car wash, and here it is for 1 sat, 2 cents. Here's one for 10, which is about 20 cents. Here's one for 5, which is about 5 cents, okay? And this is, so I want to just plant a seed in your eye. It doesn't have to be this way, but I'm just showing that it can be done. And that's the reality. So you can create this non-inflationary specie. Now, what we do is we just hand them out as discount coupons, knowing that to bring in the business, and then it also gives us the opportunity to teach people about Bitcoin. Now, now that the standard has been adopted, the first problem can be addressed. So, how are we going to get... okay, so now that we've solved that second problem, what standard are we going to use? We have to go to the first problem. Is, these people haven't been paid yet. They really have very little to spend. So what's the second problem that we're going to be dealing with? These new bankers can begin to estimate the value of the goods being offered in the market by the wealth producers. And then they can offer or issue non-inflationary specie and standards secured by the new wealth. Now, exactly how this can be done, it can be done a lot of different ways, but basically one way you can do it, if you're coming in, you can have a verbal agreement, people that you know, or that basically the issue is based on securing the wealth. And now you could actually do that if it's a swap meet and you own the swap meet, you could actually issue the paper and then secure what they have there through what they're bringing into the stadium, and then of course as they leave the stadium they can repay the loan. There's a lot of different ways. I'm not going to tell anybody how to do it. I don't have that figured out. That's really going to be up to you guys to figure out exactly the best way to do this thing, and that's what markets are about. In turn, the new wealth producer pays his suppliers. In other words, you loan to this producer, and then he pays his suppliers, he pays his workers, and they all go to the swap meet so they can redeem this specie at the swap meet. Now, whether the swap meet specie is based on gold, now again, it's not gold, but the gold standard or yardstick, or it's based on the 21st century Bitcoin standard, again, not Bitcoin, but Bitcoin standard or yardstick, or both. Part of the wealth claim could be gold or Bitcoin, since they are also available at the swap meet. So you can turn these in, and get your Bitcoin if that's what you want, or you can spend them on something else. Any other, because these represent not only Bitcoin, they're redeemable in Bitcoin, but they're also redeemable in everything else being offered on the marketplace. So you have to have some reserve to redeem these things, but it doesn't require a large reserve. When banking evolved, these banks didn't have a whole lot of gold while they were issuing specie on the gold standard. You don't need a lot of Bitcoin to put a small economy or even a large economy on a Bitcoin standard. Now, when the swap meet closes at the end of the day or the end of the week, end of the month, whatever you end it, again, a market's ongoing, so this is just an analogy. The wealth producers reduce the specie creation from the proceeds of the sales of their particular wealth sold at the swap meet by repaying the loan. And the suppliers and workers leave the swap meet with a variety of new wealth and save the unused specie for use in a future market. In other words, not all of it is going to get spent. And so you'll save some. Well, this leftover, I'll spend it the next, or maybe you're saving up because you want to buy a bigger item you don't have the money for. So you will hold this non-inflationary specie. And that's called the float. Now, the other thing that happens, some of these will get lost. They'll just get destroyed. So there is a benefit to the one that is issuing these, that they have the availability of the float, and some of the notes are going to get destroyed. Now, there's also going to be expenses involved in that, particularly safeguards against counterfeiting. But the primitive description of sound commercial banking is a far cry from the Bitcoin banking that we're witnessing today in today's liquidity train wreck, where money is created from nothing. I mean, these DeFis, they're just creating this money out of nothing that's not representing any new wealth. It's promoted with a high interest of return of something that's worthless, backed by hype, a Rube Gold machine, and more money creation rather than any real wealth. And this is aptly named a virtual asset. So the opposite occurs with sound commercial banking. Now, the scenario I'm about to describe will not happen in Tokenville, because it can't happen in Tokenville, and there's a reason for that. That is because if the value of an inflation token is driven higher, it is not withdrawn from the market. It's simply passed from on to a sucker that can only hope to do the same. In other words, the DeFi nodes, they're all being created, they're being passed on, you sell them at a higher rate, and they don't represent anything except another shitcoin that's been created. All this stuff is just created out of nothing, and you're equating creating money with wealth creation. Two different things, and these things are bound to fail, and they do. There's another link I have to the last article I wrote that's also connected to this article, A Tale of Two Toxic Cities, Tokenville and Maximalville. Now, this is not so with sound commercial banking. That doesn't happen. What happens in sound commercial banking is completely different than what is happening currently today in Tokenville. With sound banking, the worst case scenario is a short squeeze, where during the course of a swap meet, the price of Bitcoin is driven sharply higher. Now, it could go up 2x or 10x or 100x or even 1,000x. It doesn't matter the multiple, or it doesn't even matter what the time frame is. At some point, if this happens, the swap meet bank may find the need, and it's not necessary. It'd be very rare that this would happen so long as they're following sound banking principles. They may find the need to suspend redemption of the standard into Bitcoin, just like Jimmy Stewart did in It's a Wonderful Life. And I don't know if you've ever seen that movie, but it's a great movie, considered a classic, and maybe you can find it online. That's just an introduction there. Is the swap meet bank solvent? Well, according to Murray Rothbard and a decreed fiat 100% reserve standard, the bank is insolvent because it is unable to redeem the standard specie into Bitcoin. But no, the bank is not insolvent. Now, while it might be necessary to temporarily suspend redemption of the standard into Bitcoin, the 10x or 1,000x price increase enables the hodlers, people that have self-custody, to purchase 10x or 1,000x more real wealth offered in the swap meet. So for sound bank, suspension of redemption to the standard is a temporary situation that self-corrects naturally and quickly, so long as the market is free to operate, if suspension happens at all and sound commercial practices are followed. Okay? And actually, in the history of free market banking, and I'm not talking about wild cat banks that were chartered, but the rare instance that we have where free banking emerged, it was very rare for a bank to go under. Yes, some did, but they were the exception and not the rule. In fact, you can't even find the notes that they were issuing because most of them were all redeemed. If you find one, they're these tremendous collector pieces. They're a genuine NFT. So again, as long as you have sound commercial banking, and you have a free market, it's gonna self-correct, and what you're seeing today it just wouldn't happen. Very unlikely that it would. The market mechanism, and here's the other thing: as that market is going up in value, in other words, Bitcoin goes up in value relative to other things, the amount of loan being made is smaller, because Bitcoin is worth that much more. So as that market is going up, they're not expanding the money supply. They're actually reducing the amount of Bitcoin issued for the wealth that's created. You got to remember, you don't issue anything unless it represents and is secured by this new wealth that's ready to go to market, but is not in the market yet. That's what commercial banking is. That's what its function is. That's what its function is for. So it means non-inflationary is created as it means less non-inflationary purchasing media is created as the price of the standard is rising. The market forces themselves make suspension of redemption less likely and a rare exceptional circumstance. In other words, it's the market itself. Because of what's happening in the market, less and less is going to be issued. And of course, you're also going to see Bitcoin come into the market because, wow, I can get I can buy this new car, which I just dreamed of, 4 years ago. And as we know, the cycle in Bitcoin is about 4 years. So this is because the price of the standard increases new deposits from hodlers flow into the swap meet bank to take advantage of the windfall purchasing power, of 10x or 1,000x early in the day. What doesn't matter the time frame. It can happen in a day. It could happen in a month or a year. As we know, it takes time. It's not going to happen overnight. It's the self-correcting marketplace that regulates the money supply, not the fiat reserve, and not any decree. It's the market mechanism itself working. This is what we call free market banking. Now, the reserve requirements. Okay, if you have free market banking, well, you got to have some reserves. Well, yeah, I kind of agree with that. But what reserves are required to operate a sound bank on the standard? Well, you know what? I really don't have any idea. And I think anybody that thinks that they do is operating from a pretense of knowledge. And I think that's what, there was a time they thought, oh, we need a 20% reserve or a 5% reserve. What you don't understand is if the reserve is too high, then you have a lot of funds sitting idle that's tied up. And this is what used to happen, and still does happen, when you try and open a chartered bank. If you charter a bank through a state, well, they say, well, you have to have these reserves. Not only do you have to have these reserves, but it has to be in our bonds, our state bonds. Well, so now you got all this capital tied up on a depreciating asset. So the market can actually determine the reserves. And this is a concept that's just really hard for most people to understand. Now, most likely, the amount of the reserves will depend upon the type of the new wealth being created. Every situation is going to be different. The banking needs of a wheat farmer is going to be a lot different than a car manufacturer. And as the market conditions change, the reserves will correspondingly change. So in other words, it won't be just because you're manufacturing cars, but there might be something else in the economy. Say, well, you know what? We need to increase our reserves. Or, you know what? We don't need to have that big a reserve anymore. But the marketplace can determine that. It doesn't need to be decreed by fiat from on high. Merchants are free to issue their own notes. And the first banks, actually, that's what happened. The first banks evolved from merchants offering new wealth on the gold standard. Only later did commercial banking become an industry in its own right. The Bitcoin blockchain is not required for sound banking on the standard. It's completely off-chain, guys. The Lightning Network is not required, okay? Now, both, I'm sure, will be utilized in final settlements. They're both useful. But centralized accounting procedures do suffice. Seigniorage shifts from a government monopoly to the issuing banks or merchants. And it is conceivable, and I believe likely, that the float alone is enough to keep sound banks profitable, eliminating interest entirely for short-term commercial loans, because there's really no risk for anybody involved. Or very, very, very limited risk. So long as if you overestimate the value of the merchandise coming on, that's a problem. But you don't loan out, what the retail price is going to be. You loan out maybe 20 or 30 or maybe 50% of that, depending upon what the item is and what the market for that is. That's the art. That is the lost art of commercial banking. Free Bitcoin standard banking develops trusted third parties addressing the scalability issue. And again, I understand the value of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is like a guillotine. It's this thing, or it's an innovation. But it doesn't tell you, the guillotine does not tell you who to kill. You have to come through and say, well, we're only going to use a guillotine on somebody else that's killed somebody or whatever. We're not going to use it at all if you're against capital punishment. But these are things that can be developed, that also are developed in the marketplace. And just as gold acted as the governor on the gold standard, Bitcoin is the governor on the Bitcoin standard. In a free market banking, Bitcoin legal tender is not only unnecessary, but it becomes a political anathema, opening the door to Bitcoin crony capitalism. Now, Bitcoin hodlers provide hope just as little gold reserves were required for the organic emergence of sound commercial banking under a gold standard, very little Bitcoin reserves are required in Bitcoin banking, so long as the notes issued on the Bitcoin standard represent real wealth. And that's not what we're seeing now. We're seeing notes that are just issued that just print money, and we're saying this is wealth, and it's not. As purchases are made, the non-inflationary purchasing specie is retired and adequate reserves remain balanced. If the value of Bitcoin rises sharply in relation to other things, hodlers learn of the windfall and rush to the market to purchase the new wealth they could not previously afford. In this sense, self-custody hodlers act as the decentralized bank of last resort. Self-custody hodlers willingly bail out the sound banks and are enriched for doing so, while unsound banks are diminished or fail entirely. Self-custody hodlers provide added liquidity in free market banking by exchanging their digital fixed supply asset for the new supply of tangible assets that comes with wealth creation in free markets with sound money and free banking. Now, this is not a sum-zero game, but it is a win-win-win-win for the wealth producers, their workers and suppliers, the bankers who fill the gap, and the hodlers who save for the future and provide liquidity when needed. Nor is this description like the unsound bank practices today in the crypto world, where money is created out of nothing, ex nihilo, without representing any new wealth entering the marketplace. In Tokenville, the value of the specie does not increase but devalues over time. High rates of return are promised that cannot be sustained, devaluing the shitcoins of Tokenville all the more. In a very real sense, sound commercial Bitcoin banking paves the way for what Parker Lewis describes as the definancialization of money, and there's a link there if you want to read that excellent article. Self-custody Bitcoin hodlers are the bank of last resort on a free market Bitcoin sound commercial banking standard. This is why Bitcoin provides hope. Sound commercial banking is a lost art that must be relearned and applied to Bitcoin by this generation from the bottom up, not from the top down. Guys, you can do this. You can do it. It's really your duty to do it, okay? It's not going to come from the top down. You don't lobby Congress to have sound commercial banking. You just start doing it. Now, when Reason magazine, and this was back in the 1980s, asked E.C. Harwood, critics of the gold standards say there isn't enough gold to go around to permit trade or to expand it as it otherwise would. How do you respond to that? And again, that same criticism is made about Bitcoin. Well, there's just not enough Bitcoin around. So, no, it won't work because it's fixed supply and you have to have an expanding supply. Well, Harwood responded, that's exactly why there was the cultural evolution of commercial banking. Now, notice he called it a cultural evolution, that it's going to be a change in culture that's going to create this, because there wasn't enough gold to take care of all the transactions. So they devised commercial banking. Here's the key. No economist started it off, though. They did not start it. There was never an economist alive who had the wit to think that up. It just evolved because it was obviously necessary, obvious to the banker. Are you a Bitcoin hodler? We say be your own bank. Time to be your own bank. This should be obvious to you. He's got a gold reserve, and he can create more claims against it and not go broke, provided these claims are covered by an equal value of something else. You get it? Guys, do you get this? This is so cool. This is such a great opportunity. And it's going to come from you guys, the hodlers, from the bottom up, one trade at a time. It's not going to come from the top down. You don't have to be passing laws in Wyoming or having your senators in Congress. We all know where that's going to go. The opportunity, you don't need legal tender in San Salvador. The opportunity exists for 10,000 or even 100,000 microbanks to emerge spontaneously, operating solely on the Bitcoin standard at swap meets or just in any town, but for those with the courage to act quickly, practicing sound commercial banking. Just as Bitcoin emerged organically, spontaneously, without permission, and without regulation, so can free market banking emerge from anyone willing to assume the existential risks, which will become evident with success, just like with Bitcoin. Bitcoin, the innovation, provides a means to relearn the lost art of commercial banking and create useful specie in transparent ways never before possible. Yes, okay, mistakes will be made in a free market. You may not get it right initially, and you'll make mistakes on the Bitcoin standard, but that is how we learn. And like Ethereum, this new generation of Bitcoin standard bankers will run around you and break things. You're not going to get it. That's how we're going to learn. But unlike Ethereum, and unlike what's going on today, the underlying Bitcoin standard is sound. The damage will be very limited, and the benefits are going to be unlimited. So, particularly those that are maybe waking up to what they're this nightmare that they're in with Ethereum, and this money creation that the Ethereum has created. Maybe if you've learned your lesson, this Bitcoin standard waits for you. You get into something that has potential, that will really work. If you roll up your sleeves and get to work and start developing it. Now, some banks will fail, but Bitcoin and the Bitcoin standard, combined with sound banking principles, will emerge from men who have integrity and are willing to put into practice those things they know and teach. Okay, and that's by the Ugly Old Goat. I hope you got a little bit out of this. I know this is not an easy subject. I know it's hard to wrap your head around it, but I hope this has helped. Guys, all of my articles I write them on Medium, and I would appreciate it if you can clap for my articles. That would help a lot. If you want to subscribe to Medium, there's a link there. I get a little compensation for it. Also, if you want to read my articles, we do put them on my website, so they're free there. They don't transition, they don't convert perfectly, but they are there, and it takes time. Sometimes it takes a week or two before we put them on the website. So again, there's a mention of this financial summit. Another way you can support my work is I've written 2 books, and they're available on Amazon. The first one I wrote was this one here, and it's how to put yourself on the Bitcoin standard in one easy lesson. These are hardback, and they are illustrated. They have lots of pictures, and they're a genuine NFT, a real collector's piece. You can order them on Amazon, but we also have what we call the Bitcoin Start Kit. This is like $129 on Amazon. And I also just came out with my other new book called Equity Trading. And again, it's the same thing. You can get both of these books plus the ebook versions. They're $129 on Amazon each, and $79 if you get the ebook. But you get both of these books signed by me plus the ebook for $199.95 if you order it directly through our website. That's Bitcoin's Start Kit. And let's see, can you hit hit that Start Kit. There you go. So there it is. If you hit that, now you're not just going to get these 2 books. You're also going to get some gifts, and these are all bonus items. So you're going to get Saifedean's book, The Bitcoin Standard. And again, you may already have one of these. That's fine. This is an absolute gift from us to you. Give it away, because Bitcoin is about educating other people. You're going to get the little Bitcoin book that Jimmy Song and his friends wrote, which is a very good introduction to Bitcoin. Again, if you already have it, great. Give this one away. This comes in both Spanish and English, so we do have a starter kit Spanish and a starter kit English edition. You're going to get the Bitcoin Money book. This also comes in Spanish or English, and again, it's great for kids. And you're going to get Knut Svanholm's Sovereignty Through Mathematics, which is a great book. I quote him regularly. We're going to also send you a Jade wallet, okay? and you're going to get that. We're going to give you put these certificates in with a signed book, so you'll get some of that. We'll also throw in some extra stuff. We're going to throw in a hat, or you'll get one. You'll see that bag up there. You're going to get the starter kit bag, and it's really a good deal. It's $199.95. I think there's $10 shipping if it's in the U.S. We charge $35 shipping if it's outside of the U.S. And that's a bargain because I noticed the shipping is costing us about $80 to $90 if it's outside the U.S. We're not, again, if we make anything selling this kit, we are forming a Sound Money Institute here, and all the proceeds will be going to support that work and my work. So anyway, I'm glad you tuned in. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope that you learned a little bit about what Bitcoin banking will be on the Bitcoin standard. I'm just giving you a general outline. Guys, it's going to be up to you guys to figure it out. I mean, like, I have a standing offer here. I'll be glad to give you all of my hodl if I could if I could be 40 years younger. So it'd be, you guys are, 20, 30, 40 years old. What a great opportunity. What an exciting time you're living in. And just, don't get discouraged. Get in there, get to work. And, again, it's hodl, save, build a sound money. Bitcoin is a way to get sound money. It's going to be one of those tools to get us there. The goal is not to promote Bitcoin. The goal is we want sound money. Sound money means that we can have honest transactions between one another. And that's going to change. Well, I think we have to change our thinking before that happens, but I think they go hand by hand. Anyway, hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.